Hello viewers, welcome to MindMajix, your skill partner. Today we will talk about Python interview questions. Python is the best programming language in the industry, providing a good number of employment opportunities for years ahead. To boost your confidence before attending your next job interview, we were hoping you could check your knowledge of Python with us. We made a list of top 100 frequently asked questions covering all essential concepts of Python. Our trainer will explain each interview question and the concept associated in great detail, providing various examples. Stay tuned to understand what it takes to crack the Python job interviews in the market today. Before we begin with Python interview questions, please do like, share, and subscribe to MindMajix YouTube channel for research-based career insights, top interview questions, blogs, quizzes, and training videos. Without further ado, let's get started. We have done our best research to bring you the top interview questions asked. Please do comment if you think we have missed any questions. We shall come up with all your suggested questions in our next video. MindMajix has got more than what you need: training, tutorials, and interview questions. Check out our video description below for further information. Thank you. Happy learning.
Hi everybody, welcome to MindMajix. Today we'll discuss about the interview questions of series of Python. The first question is, what is Python and what are the benefits of using it and what do you understand of the with 8? So Python is one of the most successful interpreted language. When you write a Python script, it does not need any kind of compilations before the executions. Few other interpreted languages are PHP and JavaScript, and that's why we call Python is also a scripting language. The main benefits of the Python programming: it's a dynamic type language, means you do not need to mention any kind of a predefined data types. You can directly go ahead and declare the variables. Python support object-oriented programming, means you can easily go ahead and define the class, and we can inherit that particular class attributes to the other objects as well. Functions we use in our first class objects. We can assign them to variables written from other methods and pass the another benefits what we do have. Developing using Python is very quick, but running is often slower than compiled languages. Okay, Python has several uses like the web-based application, test automation, data modeling, big data analytics, and much more. And PIP 8 is the latest Python coding standard, a set of coding recommendations which guides to deliver more readable Python code. Next question is, what the output of the following Python code fragments? You can see that we have declared a particular list and we have used the append functions to append one of the elements in the particular list, as well as we have extended the list, adding the elements to the extend functions. What is the output of the following Python program? Just to justify it, means you may enormously expect the list 1 is equal to 10 and list 3 to the match with the A. But however, the flow is that like a list is getting created one after the functions is going to define. Means after define the functions, the list is going to create it. At the same time, get used whenever the sum calls the extend list methods without listing in arguments. It works like because the calculations of the expressions. Now, what's the output of this following Python program code? The definitions of the extend list functions can be changed in a different manner itself, where you can go ahead and pass that particular value and append to that particular list and return the particular list. Now, what is the statement that can be used in Python if the program requires no actions but requires it syntactically? The pass statements is a none operations. It's going to nothing happens. You should use the pass keyword in the particular lowercase. To write pass in a capital letter, we face the error. So whenever we're going to use any pass functions, we have to remember it should be in the lowercase. Next questions: what is the process to get the home directory using tilde in the functions in the Python? So what we need to go ahead and import the operating systems, because through that particular operating systems you can set the path and we can expand our Python path itself. You can set the Python path and you can import certain files also. Next question. What is the built-in types variables in Python? Built-in types variables in Python, we're going to have numbers, string, tuples, list, dictionaries, and the sets. So mutable objects is the list, dictionaries, and the sets we do have, but the number, strings, tuples, they are immutable objects. That means we are not able to go ahead and change anything over there. Next question. What is the find bugs or perform static analysis in Python application? So we can use PyChecker, which is a static analyzer, to define the bugs in Python project and also reveals the size and the complexity related to the bugs. Another tool is the PyLint, which checks whether the Python module satisfies the coding standard. When is the Python decorator used? Python decorator is a relative change that we do in the Python syntax. So whenever suppose I need a particular changes in particular Python syntax, we use our decorator function so that we can able to go ahead and change it. So here you can see the particular output before calling the functions, then hello is going to come up, and after calling the functions, the results. Now, what is the principle between a list and a tuple? Difference between we do have. So the principal difference between a list and a tuple, that's a former. The list is a mutable object, where the tuple is not mutable objects. It's allowed to be hashed, for the example, using key and for dictionaries. Next question, how does the Python handle memory management? The Python memory management manager that handles the private heap. It does the required allocations of the memory for the Python objects. And through that particular heap, we can go ahead and stack that particular programs, and the Python manager is going to help us to solve it. What is the difference between we do have in lambda expressions and the definitions? So def can hold the mutable expressions, where lambda is a unique expressions function. Def generates the functions and designates a name to call it later on. Lambda forms the function object and returns it. Def can have a return statement. Lambda cannot have the return statements. Lambda is supposed to get used inside a list and a dictionary. On the right hand side, you can see this is the particular syntax. That one line of syntax we use to the lambda functions, but when you go ahead and define any kind of additional functions, we need to go ahead and define the parts, then you have to perform that particular operations and then you have to proceed. Now next question, so write a regression expression that confirms an email ID using a Python regressions expressions module RE. So Python has regular expressions module RE. What is RE? It's like whenever we go for any NLP, natural language processing. So to process that particular expressions, we go ahead and import RE. We check out the expressions that can check the email ID for .com, .co.in and subdomain. And it's also going to search with the different strings as well. What do you think is the output of the following code fragment? Is there any error in the code or not? So here you can see that I have defined a particular list is there. The results above lines code will be the bank list. There won't be any error like the index error or certain errors. You should know that we are trying to fetch a member from that particular using an index that exceeds the member count. Because I have mentioned 10, but only the elements is 5 is there. So by the way, to retrieving only a slicing at the starting index that suppress the number of items in the list won't result in any kind of index error. So it's just going to return an empty list. Is there any switch or case statements in Python we use or not, and what's the reason behind it? So Python does not have any kind of switch statements, but you can write a switch functions that you can use it for the switching manner. What is built-in functions that Python uses to iterate over number sequences? There is a range of functions is there that's a generate a list of numbers which is used to iterate over the loops. So whenever we're going to mention the particular range, till that particular range the list is go on, it's going to give me the particular answer. So range stop means it is the number of integers to generate and start from 0, and there is a stop index as well as three things we do have: start, stop, and state. Start, it is the starting number of the sequence. Stop, it is a specified the upper limit of the sequence. And the state, it is the incrementing factor for generating the sequence. Now, what in built-in functions that Python uses to iterate over a number of sequences. First note, only integer arguments are allowed. Parameters can be positive or the negative. The range functions in Python starts from the 0 to x. Next question. What is the optional statements possible inside try and expect block in the Python? So there is two optional cases you can use try and expect block. So obviously the else clause is useful if you want to run a piece of code when the try to block does not create an exceptions. The final clause is useful when you want to execute some steps which is run, irrespective of the whether they offers an exceptions or not. Next question. What is a string in Python? A string in Python is a sequence of alphanumeric characters. They are immutable objects. It means that they don't allow any kind of modifications once they get assigned to a particular value. Python provides several methods as join, replace, or split to alter strings, but none of these change the original object. Next, what is the slicing in Python? Slicing is a string operations for extracting a part of the string or some part of a list. In Python, a string begins an index 0 and the nth character stores a positions text which is n-1. Python can also perform reverse indexing from backward directions. We can go ahead and do that with the help of negative numbers. In Python, the slice is also a constructor function which generates a slice objects. The result is a set of indices mentioned by range, start, stop, and state. The slice method allows three parameters: start, starting number of the slicing to begin; stop, the number which indicates the end of the slicing; and the state, the value to increment after each index. The default is 1. Next, what is the module in the Python? Python is supported for formatting any value into a string. It may contain quite complex expressions. One of the common uses to push values into a string with the module format specified. The formatting operations in Python has the comparable syntax as the C functions printf has. Next, is a string immutable or mutable in Python? Python strings are indeed immutable. Let's means whenever we're going to go ahead and write down any kind of string, that in here you can see I have written hello MindMajix, to string hello plus MindMajix. Okay, you cannot mute the container, the string, but can modify what it contains. That means the value of the variables, nothing else. Next, what is the index in Python? An index is an integer data type which denotes the positions within an ordered list or a string. In Python, strings are also list of characters. You can access them using the index which begins from 0 and goes to the length -1. For example, in the string program, the indexing happens like this: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, what is Docstring in Python? Docstring is a unique test that happens to be the first statements in the following Python constructs: module, function, class, or method definitions. A docstring can add it to the doc attribute of the particular string object. Some of the interview questions of the functions, like here you can see I have defined a cat. The functions receives the string now when it's going to call. And I have written the mail, means how the cat is selling. And cat.dog, the functions return the string mail when it's going to call. Okay, so this is the way we can able to go ahead and use the docstring. What is the functions in the Python programming? Functions is an object which represents a block of code and is reusable entity. It brings modularity to the program and higher degree of code reusability. Python has even as many built-in functions such as print and provides the ability to create user-defined functions as well. So inbuilt functions are also there and user-defined also there. So the date will be the when you're going to go ahead and define, and after that we give a proper name and the operations part, and then we return that particular value, and once you call it, and then use that functions. Next question, how many basic types of functions are available in Python? As I mentioned, we do have built-in functions and the user-defined functions. Built-in functions happen to be part of the Python language, and like a print, lanes, abs, etc. And the user-defined functions, which functions we are going to create our function. How do you write the functions in the Python? Step 1. To begin the function, start with the keyword depth and then the mentions of function name. We can now pass the arguments and enclose them using the parenthesis. A colon in the end marks the end of the function's header. After passing an enter, you can add the desired Python statements for the executions. That's mean name, arguments, parenthesis, operations, values returns, and then you call the function. Next questions, what is a function call or callable object? A function Python gets treated as a callable object. It can allow some arguments and also return a value or multiple values in the form of tuple. Apart from the functions, Python has other constructors such as classes or the class instances which fits in the same category. So call, if it's true, if the object being called is a callable. If it's not, the object being called, it's not a callable. What is the return keyword used in the Python? The purpose of the functions is to receive the input and return some output. The return is a Python statement which you can use in a function for sending a value back to its caller. Okay, like the definitions in the argument part, which will be coming. Next, what is the call by value in Python? Call by value the argument whether an expression or a value gets bound to the respective variable to the functions. Python will treat that the variables as local in the function level scope. Any changes made to the particular variables will remain local and will not reflect outside the functions. Next, what is a call by reference? We use both call by reference and pass by reference interchangeably. Like when we pass an argument by reference, then it is available as an implicit reference to the particular functions rather than simple call. In such a case, any modifications to the argument will also be visible to the caller. The scheme also has the advantage of bringing more time and space efficiency because it leaves the need of creating local copies as well. On the contrary, the disadvantage would be the variable can get changed accidentally during function calls. Hence, the programmer needs to handle the code to avoid such uncertainty. Next, what is the return value of the trunc functions? The functions truncate performs mathematical operations to remove the decimal values from a particular expression and provides an integer value and its output. Is it mandatory for a Python functions to a return value? It's not at all necessary for a functions to return any value. However, if needed, we can use none as return also. What does the continue to do in the Python? The continue is a jump statement in a Python which moves the control to execute the next iterations of the particular loop having the remaining instructions of the block. So the continue statement is applicable for while and the for. Once you give the conditions, it's going to execute. If you give the continue, it's going to ask you whether you want to continue or not. If you give continue, it's going to go for the next iteration. Next questions, what is the purpose of ID functions in the Python? The ID is one of the built-in functions in Python. It accepts one parameters and returns a unique identifier associated with the input objects. Next, what is the arguments during the Python? we use args as a parameter in the function's header to gives us the ability to pass the number of variables of the arguments. Please note that this is the type of the argument syntax does not allow any passing in named arguments of the function. Next, what is the args to do in the Python? You can also use that key word syntax in the Python functions declarations. It let us pass the number of arguments which can be named or keywords. Same like it's John says 25, Kelly says 22, Tom says 32. It's automatically going to pass that particular. Does the Python have the main methods? The main is a entry point of the functions which happens to be called first in the most programming language. Since Python is a interpreted best, so it's sequentially execute the lines of the code one by one. Python also does have the main methods, but it gets executed whenever we run our Python script either by directly clicking it or start from the command line. We can also override the Python default main functions using the Python if statements. What is the name do in Python? The name is a unique variable since Python does expose the main functions. So when its interpreter gets to run the script, it is first execute the code which is the level 0 in dimensions. To see the main gets called, we use the name variable and it clause compares with the value with the particular main. What is the purpose of the end in Python? Python print functions is always a print the new line in the end. The print functions accept an optional parameter known as the end. Its value by the terms of /end by default. We can change the end of the character in print statements with the value of the choice using the parameters. Okay, so whenever we're going to change it, end it, you can use end or the /end, it can be used. Next question. When should we use a break in Python? Python provides a break statements to exit from a loop. Whenever the break hits the particular code, the control of the program immediately exits from the body of it. The break statement in a nested loop causes the control to exit from the inner iterative block. Next, what is the difference pass and continue in Python? The continue statements makes the loop to resume from the next iterations. On the contrary, the pass statements instruct to do nothing and the remainder of the code will be executed as usual. Next, what the len functions do in the Python? It determines the length of the input of the string. Whatever the input we do have is going to fetch out that particular length of it. What is the character functions to the particular Python? So character functions to get re-added in Python 3.2 in versions of 3.4. It's got removed. It returns previously the string denoted the character which is Unicode point is an integer. For example, you can see I have mentioned 1 to 2 is going to return as a z and 1 to 1 to it returns with the values. Now what's the ORD functions to do in the Python? The ORD character in Python takes a string of size 1 and returns an integer denoting the Unicode functions. But whenever we need a particular Unicode objects, that time ORD functions is going to help us. What is rstrip in Python? Python provides the rstrip method which duplicates the string but leaves out the white space characters from the end. The rstrip escapes the characters from the right end based on the argument value. For the examples, we have parse the programmings, the training white space are excluded whenever we're going to use that particular rstrip. What is white space in Python? White space represents the characters that we use for the spacing and separations, the exposes and the empty representations. In Python, it could be a tab or it can be a space also. What is alpha functions in Python? Python provides that this is a built-in functions, these alpha functions, for the string handling purpose. It returns true all the characters in the string are of alphabet type, else it's going to return false. Next, how do you use the split functions in Python? Split functions works in a string to cut large piece of into the smaller chunks or the substrings. We can specifically separate to start splitting, or it is use a space one by default itself. Means there is a sentence, if you use a split functions, it's going to break it into the chunks. What does the join methods to do in Python? So Python provides a join methods which works on a string, list, and the tuples. It's combine them and returns the united value. Next, what does the title method do in the Python? Python provides the title methods to convert the first letter in each word to capital format, while the rest returns to the particular lowercase. Means as we write down any kind of a titles, so first will be the upper, rest of the lower. What makes C Python different from Python? C Python's developed in C. Prefix C represents this fact which runs an interpreter loop used for translating the Python is code for the C language. Which package is the latest form of Python? That PyPy provides a maximum compatibility while utilizing C Python implementations for improving its performance. So obviously, as we increase the particular versions of the Python, this has been implemented. What is GIL in Python language? Python supports GIL, the global interpreter lock, which is a mutex used to secure access to Python objects, synchronizing multiple threads from running the Python bytecode at the same time. So any kind of threads we can able to go ahead and mutexes. How is Python thread safe? So Python ensure the safe access to the threads. It uses the GIL mutex to set up synchronizations. If a thread loses GIL lock at any time, then you have to make the code thread safe. For example, many of Python operations execute as automatic, such as calling the short methods to use. Means to short it. Means what we're going to do, we're going to short the particular thing so that particular time also takes come. How does Python manage the menu? Python implements a heap manager internally which holds all of its objects and data structure. That heap manager does the allocations or reallocations, heap space for the particular object. So whenever we're going to assign any kind of variable, it's as equal to 10, suppose the heap manager will take that. What is a tuple in Python? Tuple is a collection of typed data structure in Python which is immutable. They are similar to the sequence, just like list. However, there is some difference between a tuple and the list. The format does not allow any kind of modifications, whereas list allows. Also, the tuples are parameters for enclosings, but the list have the square bracket in their syntax. What is a directory in Python programming? A directory is a data structure known as associations array in Python, which stores the collections of the objects. The collections is a set of keys having a single associated value. We can call it a hash map, and it gets called in other programming languages also. Next, what is a set objects in Python? Setas are order collections objects in Python. They store unique and immutable objects. Python has implementations derived from the MindMajix. So here you can see A and B is there. The intersections will be coming in the particular set object. What is the use of the dictionaries in Python? Dictionary has a group of objects, the keys, mapped to another object with the values. The Python dictionary represents mapping of unique keys to the particular values. They are mutable, hence will not change. The values associated with the keys can be of any Python types. Is Python list linked list? Python list is a variable length array which is different from the C-style linked list. Initially, it has the contiguous array for referencing to the other objects and stores a pointer to the array variable and slates. In the list head structure, here the some Python objects you can see the head, legs, the previous, then the next previous will be now. What is the class in Python? Python supports object-oriented programming and provides almost all OOPS features to use in programs. A Python class is a blueprint of creating the object. It defines member of variables and gets their behavior associated with them. We can make it by using the keyword class. An object gets created from the constructor. The object represents the instance of this particular classes. In Python, we generate class and instance in the following way. So the class human, this is a human class. Then we pass it to the particular humans and then we create the particular object in the class. Next question, what the attributes and the methods in the Python class. A class is useless if it has not defined any kind of function. We can do it so by adding up by the attributes. They work as a containers for the data and the functions. We can add an attribute directly specifying inside the class body. So the class human, the profession is a programmer. That's passing the particular object. So the programmer, after we added the attributes, can go to the define the functions. Generally, we call the methods. In the method signature, we always have to provide the first arguments with the self keyword. Next question. How to assign values for the class attributes at the runtime. We can specify the values for the attributes at the runtime. We need to add an init methods and pass input to object constructor. So here you can see the particular init, the initializations we are doing with the self professions. Then we create the particular self professions objects and define that so that we can use it later on for the human professions. What is inheritance in the Python programming? Inheritance is an OOPS mechanism which allows an object to access its parent class features. It carries forward the best class functions to the particular child. Obviously means whenever from the master class we're going to inherit that particular functions in the child. So that's called the inheritance. What is the compositions in the Python? Compositions is also type of inheritance. Python intends to inherit from the base class but a little differently by using an instance variable of the base class acting as a member of the derived class. The demonstrate constraint the need to instance other object in the particular class, and you can use that particular instances also. What are the error and exceptions in Python programs? Error are coding issues in a program which may cause in exit unknown. On the contrary, exceptions happen due to the occurrence of an external event which interrupts the normal flow of the particular program. How do you handle exceptions with the try, expect, finally in Python? Python laid down try, expect, finally construct to handle error as well as the exceptions. We enclose the unset code intended under the try block, and you can keep our for black code inside the expect block. Any instructions in the executions, the last should become the find. First will be the try, then the except block, and then the find. How do you raise exceptions for predefined conditions in Python? You can raise an exceptions based on some conditions. For example, if you want to user to enter any odd number, only the odd numbers, else will raise an exceptions. So that's times you can use as a exceptions wise. What are Python iterators? Iterators in Python are array-like objects which allow moving on the next element. We use them in traversing the particular loop. So the iter next, then the elements will be coming up. Next question, what's the difference between the iterator and iterable? The collections of type like a list, tuple, dictionary, and set all are iterable objects, whereas they are also iterable containers which returns the iterator while traversing. Here are some advanced level Python interviews questions like the iterator. Whenever you use that particular iterator, it's going to traverse that particular things and you can see in that particular traversing. What are the Python generators? A generator is kind of functions which later specify a functions that acts like a iterator and hence can get used in a for loop. In a generator functions that EL keyword substitutes the return particular sets. What are the closure in Python? Python closure are the functions objects return by another functions. We use them to eliminate code. In the examples below, we can see that whenever we can eliminate the particular codes, we can use this. Next question. What are the directories in the Python? Python directories gives us the ability to add new behavior to the particular given objects of dynamically. In the example, we have written a simple example, like here you can see that the samples is written, as well as we define that args and the krs, and after the particular functions call, functions to multiply the particular two elements will be automatically. Next question. How to create a dictionary in Python. So dictionary in Python, for that we first need to break the key and value pairs with the colons. The keys should be of an immutable types. We'll use the data types which don't allow changes in the particular runtime. We'll choose from integer, string, tuple, any kind of a data type. So you can add and choose it. So dictionary is basically key and value map. How do you read from a dictionary in Python? To fetch the data from a dictionary, we can directly access using the keys. We can enclose a key in the quotes using brackets, and then you directly fetch out that particular value corresponding of that particular. How do you traverse through a dictionary objects in Python? You can use for loop, the looping on, you can able to go ahead and traverse that particular dictionary object. How do you add elements to a dictionary in Python? You can add elements by modifying the dictionary, the fresh key, and then set the value to it. Next, how to delete elements of a dictionary in Python? You can delete a key in a dictionary by using the del methods. By using that particular del methods, you can able to go ahead and delete it. Another method we use the pop functions. It accepts the key as a parameter. Also, a second parameter we can pass the default value. The key does not exist. Next, how do you check the presence of a key in a dictionary? So we can use Python's in operator to test the presence of the particular key inside in the particular objects or the instance. What is the syntax for the least comprehensions in Python? The signature of the least comprehensions, it will be in the particular square brackets. Okay. For example, the below code you can see. It will be that particular var for var in range we mentioned, so that particular list is going to come. Now, what is the syntax for dictionary comprehensions in Python? A dictionary has the same syntax as was for the list comprehensions, but the difference is that use curly braces. As Python do have lots of braces in the brackets. For examples, for dictionary, we can go ahead and use that particular curly braces. Next, what is the syntax of generator expressions in Python? Syntax for generator expressions matches with the least comprehensions, but the difference is that uses the parenthesis. Different parenthesis is going to work with a different way. With the different values, we can able to go ahead and use it through that. How to write a conditional expressions in Python? We can utilize the following single statement for the conditional expressions. Means the if conditions else another statements. Whenever we pass on any kind of a conditions block, it's going to execute with the if else block, as if the conditions is execute, else another things is going to execute. Next question. What do you know about the Python enumerate? While using the iterator, sometimes we might have a use case to store the count of the iterations. Python gets the task quite easy for us by giving a built-in methods called the enumerate. The enumerate functions attach the counter of the variables to an iterable and returns the enumerated objects. We can use the objects directly in the for loops for transform into a list of tuples by calling in the list methods. So enumerate is going to help us to do the particular things. This is a particular enumerate object, so automatically the iterations also we can able to go ahead and see that how many iterations we can able to go ahead and use over there. What is the use of globals functions in Python? The globals functions in Python returns the current global symbols tables as a dictionary object. The Python maintains a symbol table to keep all necessary informations about a program. The info includes the names of the variable, methods, the classes used by the program. All the informations in the table remains in the global scope of the program, and Python allows to retrieve using this particular global scope. How do you use the particular zip methods in Python? Zip method lets us map the corresponding index of the multiple containers so that we can use them using a single unit. We just go ahead and zip it. So it will be as a it's going to execute as a single. Next question. What do you use the zip methods in Python? In Python, all objects share the common class or the static variables, but the instance or non-static variables are altogether different for different objects. The programming languages like C++ and Java need to use the static keyword to make a variable as a class variable. However, Python has a unique way to declare the particular static variable. All names initialized with a value in the class declarations becomes the class variables, and those which is get assigned values to the particular class methods becomes the instance variables. Zip, like whenever we're going to execute in a single unit as well, we are going to use the particular zip method to do this. Next question. What does the ternary operator work in Python? The ternary operator is an alternative for the conditional statements. It combines the true false with the particular statements. That means if it's a true, it's going to execute one conditions. On the type of false, it's going to execute another conditions. What does the self keyword do? The self is a Python keyword which represents a variable that holds the instance of an object. In almost all the object-oriented programming language, it's passed to the methods as a hidden path. What is the different methods to copy an object in Python? There are two ways to copy the objects. One is the copy.copy functions. It makes a copy of the file from source to the particular destination. It will return a shallow copy of the file. And the copy.deepCopy functions, it also produces. It will return a deep copy of the parameter that you can pass the particular function. What is the purpose of the docstring in Python? In Python, the docstring is what we call as the docstring. It sets a process of recording Python functions, modules, and the particular classes. Which Python functions will you use to convert a number of a string? For converting a number into a particular string, you can use the built-in functions. Means we're going to go ahead and do the kind of typecast whenever we're going to change that particular data types. So if you want to octal, hexadecimal, so you do have the functions of hex for the typecasting to convert the numbers to a particular string or any other format. Next question. How do you debug a program in Python? Is it possible to step through the Python code? Yes, you can use the Python debugger, it's PDB, to debug the program. And if we start a program using PDB, then it let us even step through the particular code for the debug. List down some PDB commands for debugging Python. So how it's going to happen? Add the breakpoints, then it will be the resume the executions. Step by step debugging will be coming up. Next will be the move to the particular next lines of which it's going to check. List the source code and print that particular expressions. This is the particular methods we follow that particular debug. What is the command to debug a Python program? The following command helps run a Python program in the debug mode. It's $python-in pdb python script file. This is the particular syntax we need to go ahead and use for the debugging in the Python programs. How do you monitor the code flow of a program in Python? In Python, we can use the sys modules, the setTrace method to set up the trace hooks and monitor the functions inside the particular program. Now we need to define the particular trace callback methods, and then we're going to pass it to the subtrace functions. For the callback should be specified in the three arguments. So imports will be there, then the definitions, then passing that particular setTrace. Why and when do we use the generators in the Python? A generator in Python is a function which returns an iterable object. We can iterate on the generator object using the EL keyword, but we can only do the once because their value stone precedes in the particular menu. They get the values on the fly. Generator gives us the ability to hold the executions of a function or a step as long as we want. To keep it, however, here are a few examples we just give it. You can replace the loops with the generator for efficiently calculating the results involving the large data sets. Generators are useful when you do not want all the results and we wish to hold back for some time. Instead of using callback functions, we can replace it with a particular generator. We can write a loop inside the particular functions, doing the same thing as a callback and trans it into the particular generator. Next question. What does the EL keyword do in the particular Python? The EL keyword can turn any functions in the particular generator. It works like a standard return keyword, but it will allows a return a generator object. Also methods can have multiple calls to the particular EL keywords. Next, how to convert list into the other data types. Sometimes we do not use list, instead we have to convert them to the other data types. So you can use a particular dot join methods which combines all the elements into one and returns as a particular string. How do you count the occurrence of each time present in the list without explicitly mentioning them? Unlike sets, list can have the items with the same values. In Python's, list has a count functions. Which count functions? Count functions is going to return the particular occurrence of the particular item. Like in the particular list, how many elements I have mentioned and how many times that particular elements is there in the particular list. We can go ahead and we can able to go ahead and find out through the particular count function. Next, what is a NumPy and how does it better than a list in the Python? NumPy is a Python package for scientific computing which can deal with the large data sets. It includes a powerful n-dimensional array object and set of advanced functions. Also, NumPy arrays are the superior to built in the particular list. There is number of reasons, like number of arrays are more compact than the list. Reading and writing items is very fast in NumPy. It's more convenient to do the convenient for the rather than the standard list. More efficient, they pass the arguments in the function. You do have also do certain do the numerical calculations also. Next, what is the difference? Ways to create an empty NumPy array in Python. There are the two methods we can apply to create empty NumPy. The first method that's we create an empty array. That's we need to go ahead and call the NumPy library and then you pass that particular empty array and then you go ahead and pass that particular empty array shape so that automatically the dimensions will be 0 0. The empty array will be going to print. So this is all for 100 questions we'll be having for the Python interview questions. Hope you have enjoyed the sessions. Happy learning. Thank you.